Welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. And look who's here. It is our friend, Andy Borowitz, writer, comedian, New York Times bestselling author, creator of the TV show Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I wish you would create the Dean Obeidallah Show. Something, the Fresh Prince, whatever, of Jersey, the guy from Jersey. And of course, creator of the wildly popular The Borowitz Report, which is now on Substack. We can check it out there. Andy, nice to see you. Thanks for being on near the end of America. It's great to have you. This is like the Titanic, and we are in the steerage. We're like in third class of the Titanic, and we're looking up and like, there's an iceberg right there. No one else sees it. And me and Andy are like, there is an iceberg, and no one sees it. Oh, some few people see it. How are you?
I'm good, Dean. I'm very good. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Have you worked on a plan B? Well, you're already in plan B where you live, right? That is plan B.
Yeah, I'm in New Hampshire. It's going to take a while for the forces of totalitarianism to find me. My theory is that they're going to come looking for me, and en route they'll discover that they're just no good restaurants, and they'll turn around and go home.
Is New Hampshire not known for good food? Is that part of the world there?
I live in a small town. I don't want to trash my small town, but you live in New York City. I used to live in New York City, and
people ask about you.
The Zagat guide is a little bit thicker in New York City than it is in New Hampshire. I just got to be honest about that.
Fair enough. All right, my friend. We're going to talk about some serious things. We're going to have some fun too. Let's begin with a little fun because you were posting yesterday about Donald Trump go to Les Miserables at the Kennedy Center, which he controls and his minions control, and he still got booed there. He got some cheers, but he got booed too, which is interesting because he controls this place.
Were you there last night, Dean?
I was playing Javert. You don't know this. I am Javert, and I am also Jean Valjean understudy 24601. I am ready. Is that it?
You're ready. Well, I was thinking if you had been there, I mean, maybe I wouldn't have seen you because you might have been in drag. Because a lot of the people in the audience were, in fact, drag queens. And I don't just mean George Santos and J.D. Vance. There were other actual drag queens there. There's a wonderful photo. I think it's the Associated Press. I really recommend everybody look it up. It's Jim Jordan and his wife, and they're like waiting to go in, and in the background, there are all these drag queens also waiting, and they've got great names like Maria Con Carne. I mean, it's really whoever decided that there was going to be a drag queen protest at Les Miserables. When I'm president of the United States, they're getting the Presidential Medal of Freedom. It was wonderful.
I saw the pictures. I think that at first I didn't know if it was real or not. I'm like, is this really at this event? And then I'm like, oh, it is at this event. So I love that kind of creative dissent. Unfortunately, they're going to be deported, even if they're born here. But it was very nice for that moment, that brief shining moment they had there.
It's so hard, Dean, right now to know what photos are real or not. Like, whether or not I've got like a gang tattoo on my knuckles. You just one doesn't know anymore. But it was wonderful. I was wondering what Donald Trump's takeaway is from Les Miserables, because apparently, and I'm not making this up, I have to clarify, it's one of his favorite Broadway musicals. He loves Les Miserables, even though it's about a mob uprising against a tyrannical king. You would think that wouldn't really be his cup of tea. I have a theory of why Donald
What's your theory? That's why I'm here.
Okay. I think he relates to Jean Valjean because he thinks Jean Valjean has been treated very unfairly.
Sure.
Jean Valjean just stole a piece of bread. Donald Trump steals something every day and there's never been a problem. But I think he thinks that a weaponized deep state has gone after Jean Valjean, and it should never be allowed to happen. That's my theory of his love of this show.
And J.D. Vance loves it because he identifies with Cosette because of the eyeliner, right? He's like, I love that eyeliner. Little Cosette, a drop of rain can't hurt you now. Every song is in my head from Les Miserables. If you say any line, I'll immediately begin doing the song because not that I can sing, but they're all in my head because it's the same melody for almost every song.
Well, the big news from last night, which I think didn't get enough. People were very focused, as is understandable. You and I have been talking about, did he get booed? Right. Did he get cheered? It was a little bit of both. I will say, the house was half empty, and you and I are both performers. When we're doing a show and the house is half empty, that's not a very good sign in general. That's pretty bad. The house was half empty, and people were focusing on that. They were focusing on the drag queens and the booing. But one thing they didn't focus on was that standing next to him in the presidential box was Melania Trump. Where's she been?
I think her contract's very specific. I think on page 8, she must go to events at the Kennedy Center. She's like, damn, you got me. Like, that's all. You have to pay extra for other events, but Kennedy Center is in the original contract. She didn't like it. I talked to her lawyer. I'm kidding. I didn't talk to her lawyer about it, but I'm chatting with Andy Borowitz. Andy, it's also interesting that maybe Trump identifies with storming the barricade because he feels like his people on January 6th stormed the barricade, even though he was also the king. At the same time, he is both the king and the victim. He's both Jean Valjean and Javert. He's remarkable.
That's like
Trump is both sides.
Schrodinger's Trump. I mean, that is blowing my mind, that theory. I just think no matter what, I mean, he is capable of inhabiting both roles as long as he sees himself as a victim in either role. Like, he's being persecuted for the bread, and the king is also being treated very unfairly by Victor Hugo. I don't know. I think that he is capable of having empathy for anybody that he thinks is himself. I don't know if that's the same thing as empathy. I think that's maybe almost the opposite of empathy. But he is capable of inhabiting victimhood in all of its forms.
So let me ask you, Andy, you're a big time performer. You sell out theaters. Would you perform at the Kennedy Center during Trump's reign over here of the Kennedy Center?
I want to make it very clear before you think that I'm taking a big stand here. Trump has not invited me to perform at the Kennedy Center. But no, I wouldn't. And I applaud all the people who've dropped out. It's really, as Trump would say, it should never be allowed to happen in our country. It's just it's an example of how thin-skinned he is. And I know everyone says, well, it's the authoritarian playbook. You want to control the culture. And I get that. I do think that is a part of it. But I also think part of it is that he can't stand that all these libs are putting on shows and some of them might be critical of him. And so he has to just control all of that. I think that it just comes from what an incredibly weak, cowardly man. Oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have used the word man. Yeah. Little baby boy he is. And speaking of babyish, if I can do a little expert segue here, Dean, is there anything more babyish than wanting to have a big parade for your birthday? I mean, that's the thing that strikes me about this. Everyone, again, is like saying the military parade is like, you know, Mussolini or Kim Jong-un. And it's like, again, yes, I understand we're serious here. But to me, the impulse to want to have a bunch of tanks rolling down the street is like something a 4-year-old would want. And when you hear him talking about it, he's like saying, there are going to be new tanks and old tanks from World War II and World War I. He sounds just like a child. And I just wish it would save so much money if we just got him a bounce house. Yeah. That would be a much cheaper option.
Sure, I like that. And I don't, I'm hoping those tanks still work and whatever happens, happens. Just leave it at that. Google Anwar Sadat. Oh, go ahead. Or don't. It's up to you.
Yeah.
I'm not advocating anything. I'm just saying things happen at military parades that you can't control. Right. I'm only hoping for Trump to go to prison. It's interesting. We're going to have this parade. He made it clear that if you protested, they're going to be met with, quote, very big force. Met with then he said very heavy force. So it's big things like they're going to drop some kind of big weight, like from Wile E. Coyote on you. I'm not really sure what's going on.
Piano will drop.
Yeah. A piano. But Trump doesn't even make a distinction between criminal protests or any protest. If you protest his birthday, you're going to be hit with heavy force. Something big is going to drop on you. I'm not sure what it's going to be, but it's going to be big. It's going to be heavy. And he's just taunting us to protest. Like, I didn't want to go to DC and protest, but now I want to go down there and protest him, not the army. I want to protest Donald Trump.
Well, I'd love to. You made a comment the other day on Substack, which I love, which is that he hates our freedom. It's like right from the George W. Bush, famous quotations. He really does. Like the First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly. He really can't stand all these. And I love that he says, what's great about Donald Trump and Stephen Miller, who I think deserves a lot of commendation here as well, is that they really don't believe in nuance. They're perfect in a way for the era of Twitter or X or whatever it's called, which is that nuance doesn't play very well in social media. You have to be loud, you've got to be short, you got to sort of talk in catchphrases. And you'd think if like Trump is violating the law in unleashing soldiers against the American people, that is against the law. We do have a law against that was passed after the Civil War. I'm sure you were aware
we
with that.
We have laws, but they don't apply.
Yeah, he's breaking the law. But somebody asked him, like, he in one of his press conferences, they said, "Well, is this just the beginning? You sent troops to LA. Are you going to send troops other places?" And he said, "We're going to have troops everywhere." It's like, what?
New Hampshire,
really, everywhere? Like
Indy's little town.
I mean, Rodeo Drive. I mean, what? I mean, is it really? Are we really going to have troops everywhere? That first of all, we're going to have to reinstitute the draft. I've got news for everybody. Remember how in like Vietnam War, if you've seen documentaries, there are a lot of protests because people were being drafted. It's going to be like, hell no, we won't go to Chicago. It's like people are not going to be.
I like that.
People are like going into the army now in the hopes of maybe getting an education, getting out of poverty, and it's like the way we advertise the military now that we have a voluntary military is that this is a way to improve your station in life. It's not, I don't think most people signing up for the military are thinking, oh, great, I'm going to be shipping off to Philadelphia to fire at my fellow American citizens. I just don't think, I know there was like a big rah-rah sort of Nuremberg rally at Fort Bragg this week, but I really don't think that every member of the military or even a majority of the military thinks that what they're in it for is to kill Americans. I just find that very, very hard to believe.
I agree with that. The idea of them crossing the ocean isn't going to Brooklyn. I hope I can cross the East River one day, which actually technically isn't a river, folks. It's an estuary. It's actually ocean water. So it's actually, not to get into it, I live close by Google.
It is an ocean. It is an ocean.
It is. So it actually is. So you're crossing an ocean. And the Battle of Brooklyn fought in the Revolutionary War, and they came over to Kips Bay, the U.S. troops, to retreat right here. It's remarkable how much in Manhattan, how much of the Revolutionary War was fought around here and up in the northern Manhattan and also in Brooklyn. And everyone talked about like Boston. It was here. But I'm chatting with our friend Andy Borowitz. Andy, one quick thing though. We were hearing from these historians and experts on fascism that in the modern era, when fascists come in and end a democracy, there's no longer troops in the streets or tanks in the street. But with Trump, there literally are. Like, it's not even any subtlety. Like, Viktor Orban didn't have to have troops in the street. He just dismantled democracy from within. Trump, literally, they're going to be tanks on the street Saturday, and there's U.S. Marines being deployed to Los Angeles. And he's commandeering federal troops and threatening to put them everywhere. Is this not what fascism looks like? Am I missing something?
Well, it's I mean, I guess it's kind of, nostalgia. Perhaps it's like a throwback version of fascism. What's sort of sad is that, in the last 25 years or so, there's been this journalistic cliche of like, especially like during the 2000 election when it was so contested about, hanging Chads in Florida and all of that. And they said, well, there was a peaceful transfer of power. There were no tanks in the streets. Now we're not going to be able to say that anymore. It was such a nice cliche, the whole thing about how there were no tanks in the streets. Now there are tanks in the streets. I hope the streets can handle it. That's another issue, which is that in general, it's a big issue about which roads are strong enough to handle. Abrams fighting machines are very heavy.
Sure, it should be.
I'm just hoping it would never happen in New York, I don't think, because downtown there's congestion pricing now. So I don't think the tanks, it's just prohibitively expensive now to drive tanks.
It's interesting. Well, look, they had the tanks. Pete Hicks has testified. He has no idea what section of the Constitution allows Trump to deploy the Marines. Although earlier, he said, we have contingencies to even take Greenland. And the representative who's a Republican going, you're not saying we have plans to take Greenland. And Hicks had to be the tough guy. Well, we have contingencies for everything. So I guess it could be one day we're going to take downtown Manhattan. We're taking only 55th Street to 87th Street or something like that. I'm like, wow, just here?
I repeat, I know that the Trump administration is not big on math. I know they're not really great at math, and especially the Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, from WWE. But I maintain we do not have the troop strength to realize all of Trump's imperial and domestic ambitions. We can't take Greenland and Los Angeles. It's like two fronts at the same time. And I just don't think, I think they're going to have to literally choose their battles at some point. Would they rather, maybe even in Los Angeles, do you take Paramount and MGM, but not Universal? I don't think they can achieve regime change at all of those studios. They're going to have to really decide.
He can send the troops to go after media outlets right there, do that. Like, to me, I can accept certain things, but if one day the troops take Trader Joe's where I live by, that's it. I'm joining the resistance. Whatever resistance out there, I'm with you folks. So we have to liberate Trader Joe's. I'm chatting with our friend Andy Borowitz. So Andy, look, Americans, they're not all paying attention. I mean, that's part of the problem. But
Right.
but some are. And there's a new Quinnipiac poll that came out, and the poll was conducted from last Friday through Monday. So over the weekend, it took in some of Trump federalizing the troops. And Trump's approval rating is the lowest that it's been in the second term, 38%. And on issues like immigration, it dropped from high 40s to 43%. And on deportations, it's down to 40%. And this is a pretty reputable poll. Quinnipiac, it's well-respected polling. Something's going on. So while not everyone's paying attention, I guess people get little drips and drabs. And there might be other things built into this. You know, we had today the unemployment numbers for week to week, but we have the biggest continuing unemployment claim since the COVID right now. Like it keeps creeping up, not the overall number, but new filings and people staying on unemployment. So there might be also an economic thing out there that I'm oblivious to, that I keep looking for signs, but Trump's approval ratings are the lowest they've been in his term. It's not winning for him right now.
Well, look, in terms of unemployment, just the vaccine experts who've been fired, I think they number like 100,000 that RFK Jr. has gotten rid of so far. Look, people have got to, put out their hair that's on fire and face some facts. Trump has never been popular. He won a close election. 700,000 votes. Had they gone in a different direction in the swing states, Kamala Harris would be president of the United States. And he won by plurality. I mean, that's why all these, books and magazines about the Democrats are in crisis. The Democrats are one good candidate away from taking the White House. They're not in crisis. They have some issues, but when their opponent is at 38%, that suggests that he has some issues too. There's a saying, and I think I've probably quoted this on your show before, but Freud had this saying, which was eventually reality insists upon itself.
Yes.
And I know that the social media world and X and TikTok and the rest of it can, create deep fakes and lies and all the rest of it. But if you go to the grocery store and you can't afford your weekly groceries, or you just notice they're significantly higher, or if your favorite waitress at the diner has been carted off by ICE, eventually that kind of eclipses whatever you're seeing on TikTok or X. So I do think that I'm surprised, actually. People would say, like, how could half the country be in favor of Trump? Well, half the country isn't. We're looking at 38%. And I'm actually surprised that those numbers are this low this early, to be honest with you, because a lot of things haven't really worked through the system yet. We haven't seen the effect of 55% tariffs on China, for example. They are going to affect prices, even though Trump keeps on saying, eat the tariffs, whatever that means. Not every price can be eaten. They're going to go up.
Not with cheeseburgers.
People are going to notice that people they really like have been dragged off the street and taken away. They're not all rapists and murderers and gang members. Actually, your favorite waitress too, and her children. So it doesn't look good. And all this military might that, Stephen Miller and Donald Trump are deploying, those aren't shows of strength. Those are shows of weakness.
Are you looking forward to the Nuremberg type trials that we're going to have when this is over with Trump and Stephen Miller?
Well,
I just wrote about it. I mean, I sincerely am making a case for it.
You and I are on the same page here, my friend, because at the Borowitz Report for the last 3 months, we've had a Sunday feature, which has been called Traitor of the Week. And my premise was that, people refer to Quislings, and people are, I'm sure you're aware of this because you're a student of history, but a Quisling, which is another word for traitor, is a relatively recent term. It was named for a gentleman named Vidkun Quisling, who was this notorious Norwegian traitor who was tried for treason and executed after World War II. And so Quisling became literally synonymous with traitor. It's in the dictionary, and it's a great word. It sounds sort of like a sniveling, cowardly Quisling. So the premise that I had for Traitor of the Week was, with all due respect to the Norwegian people, I think it's time to update the term because we have this embarrassment of traitors in the United States. And so wouldn't it be good to maybe swap out Quisling, or, maybe side by side, we could just introduce another synonym for traitor. So for 12 weeks, I would propose different traitors of the week, like, you name them, Marco Rubio, Mitch McConnell, people who J.D. Vance, people who really know better, but are enabling fascism regardless. And after a really long, heated contest, I finally put it up to a vote, and the two finalists were, in fact, Mitch McConnell and Stephen Miller. Do you know, any guess who might have won that?
Stephen Miller, I believe, should win, but Mitch McConnell has a long history of doing really bad things to our country.
Yes. Well, they were both, look, it's sort of an Ali Frazier situation. They both were up to the task. The winner was, in fact, Mitch McConnell. And I think by a 2-to-1 margin. And I think the rationale that most of my readers had was that although Stephen Miller is, God knows, odious and horrific, in terms of how much impact the two had, Mitch really got the whole party started, because without him and his interventions with the Supreme Court, and his failure to vote to impeach Donald Trump, even though he had, staged an incited insurrection, he really was more instrumental as an enabler. And so it was really quite striking, because, but bear in mind, none of my readers were big fans of Stephen Miller. They hated him too, but they really felt that still, at the end of the day, Mitch McConnell was the guy.
I think from the body of work of Mitch McConnell, if you're going to do a retrospective, through the years, it would be all of his work in first blocking Obama from picking a Supreme Court justice to fill Scalia's seat, right, which had huge repercussions, through blocking judges, protecting Donald Trump. And he really, you're right, he's earned it. I think Miller's got a lot of potential. The kid could do it. I think he's got a lot going for him in terms of evil. And you had an article about Stephen Miller that Trump sends Stephen Miller to LA. Tell us about your article. What was Well,
yeah, this was really this was an undercovered story that I posted at the Borowitz Report, which is that there's been a lot of deployments lately, because, LA is on fire, Dean. I don't know if you're aware.
Yeah, I talked to friends there.
The city's on fire. By the way, I was there during the LA riots. Excuse me, this is not a riot. I've got to, pull riot rank on this current disturbance. This does not qualify as a riot in my experience of LA riots. Anyway, I did post that Donald Trump was sending Stephen Miller to LA as a human repellent, because no one clears a room. He's like one of those, what do they call them? Flashbangs. He's like
a human flashbang.
Yeah, flashbang. He's like a human flashbang. You just put Stephen Miller. People see Steve's coming, the party's over. People just leave the party. They don't even bother to take their coats. They just get the hell out of there.
Did you ever see the movie The Cooler with William H. Macy and Alec Baldwin?
No.
Oh, it's William H. Macy plays this down on luck guy who Baldwin runs a casino, and they have William H. Macy as the cooler, he's human bad luck. So
right. I'm familiar with this.
He goes up to like the blackjack table, and the guy starts losing hand after hand. Or in craps, the guy craps out. So Stephen Miller, on some level, is a more evil gargoyle type of the cooler. William H. Macy is sad, and you root for him. Stephen Miller, I root for things that happen to him, but I don't root for him. And I like that Elon Musk took his wife. There's something enjoyable about that.
Well, the ultimate cooler in our current scenario is Donald Trump, because pretty much everything he gets involved in, like a great economy, relative peace and prosperity. I mean, it's like he is really gosh, he's kicked the sand in the gears. All over the place, like everything. One thing that's not really being covered, Dean, because it is truly a fire hose, and we're just trying to catch it all in a thimble right now. But Trump has this guy, this golf buddy of his, Steve Witkoff, who's like his Henry Kissinger.
Yep.
He's sending him around the world to diffuse context. That dude has not done shit. Okay, can I just say that Steve Witkoff is totally inexperienced as a diplomat. He's a real estate developer, and he's being sent out into the world, whether it's Ukraine and Russia or Gaza or Iran. And suddenly Trump has given him this portfolio that rightly should belong to little Marco, our Secretary of State. But instead it's going to little Steve Witkoff. And we're no closer to peace or even an agreement in any of these places, much like Scott Bessent, that genius, has not made a single trade deal except a very small temporary one with those tough negotiators, the United Kingdom. There's this really lazy journalistic cliche, which is that Donald Trump is all about the deal, because there's this book called The Art of the Deal that Donald Trump didn't write, but has his name on it.
Yep.
And Donald Trump can't make a deal. Like, there are no deals. You know the show Deal or No Deal? We're just in a show called No Deal right now.
No deal.
No deal.
Or also, let's make a deal. Let's make no deal. And by the way, as we sit here, Witkoff is speaking to, I think, Iranian leaders in an effort to try to simmer that down. So by tomorrow morning, there should be explosions over Tehran, because that's not going to work. Remember, Trump promised to end the Ukraine war in 24 hours. He was in the Gaza war. He's not only not ended those, he's beginning a civil war in the United States, and he had a war with Elon Musk. So we have extra war. You like war?
We have more wars.
We've had more wars.
He destroyed the world economy in one day, to give him credit.
Liberation Day, remember that?
Yeah, Liberation Day, where we were liberated from money.
Yep.
Yeah, he did do that. So, he's good at doing things fast. I mean, he's good at, bankrupting things. He can do that in 24 hours. But what's funny is that he honestly still thinks that he's going to win the Nobel Peace Prize. That is how delusional this guy is. I've got news for him. If you're trying to appeal to the voters, the Nobel Committee that gives out the Nobel Peace Prize, don't invade your own cities. It's a bad look. It's going to come up in the discussions when they're just trying to decide whether it's you or Greta Thunberg for the Nobel Peace Prize. They're going to say, well, did Greta ever send tanks to a city in her country? And they'll say, no, I guess not. They're going to give it to Greta. So
that's right. I could just see them going like, and you sent tanks to your own city, huh? And you won the Nobel Peace Prize here. It says here you activated the Marines for the first time ever to go on U.S. soil. We're trained to kill people. Yeah, okay. We're going to have to say no. We don't have to continue. All right, Andy, I want to thank you, my friend. And where can people sign up? Check out the Borowitz Report, which is great stuff online at Substack. Where can they go?
My name is Andy Borowitz. If you just go to Borowitz Report, one word, borowitzreport.com, it'll take you there. And I even got the URL to the name Horowitz Report, because sometimes people get my name mixed up. So even if you type Horowitz Report, you will get to the right place. So how about that?
Andy Borowitz /Horowitz. It's great to see you, my friend. I look forward to chatting with you in a month from now.